Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my second base rankings for 2015 Fantasy Baseball. So this is going to be a longer video than my catcher rankings, I guarantee it, because I'm actually going to go a little bit more in-depth into each and every one of these players. I rank my top 12 players here, because I feel as though kind of everyone past this top 12 isn't extremely fantasy relevant. These are like the top 12 guys I'd want. All those guys below them, you're kind of just drafting for potential. Guys like Chase Utley and Howie Kendrick, I don't really envision them being as good as they were last year, because I'm sure, like, Chase Utley's a guy that hit around 300 last year, but he's going to be 36 this year. There's not many 36-year-olds hitting 300 in baseball anymore. So we're going to start off, once again, Robbie Cano at number 1 for second base. Perennially number 1, I can't argue with that. He's going to hit for a lot of average. He's a very consistent hitter. He's going to hit for a decent amount of home runs. We saw the Safeco drop in power last year for for Robinson Cano. I almost said Jose Cano because I looked at Jose Altuve's name. But his home runs did come down, but I feel like he's going to get a few more than he did last year because he's going to figure out how to hit Safeco a little bit more this year. He's a good hitter. 90 RBI, 80 runs. There's somewhat of an improved lineup there, so those are definitely good projections. And he actually stole 10 bases last year, and I think he can do that again this year. The decrease in his home runs means that he's going to be on base more, and he's going to steal. Now, number 2, I'm going to say Jose Altuve. Jose Altuve was the number 1 player in fantasy last year, I believe. And he had an insane BABIP last year, so don't expect him to hit like 340 again this year. But 315 batting average is a decent projection for him that goes a little bit more in line with his career BABIPs, as well as just a little bit of BABIP progression from his career. And 8 home runs, yeah, decent. His ISO and stuff was down a little bit last year, actually. RBI, he doesn't get a lot of RBIs, but he's going to get more than he did last year because there's an improved lineup this year. I keep getting a pop-up here. 110 runs is a definite good projection for him because there's a much better lineup. They have Evan Gattis in that lineup now. They have George Springer for a full year. I think they're going to do a lot better. They got Luis Valbuena in there. He's not great, but he's not terrible. So I have a feeling they're going to have a pretty good lineup this year with Colby Rasmus and everything. 50 stolen bases. He's going to be on base less this year, which means he's probably going to have less stolen bases. But I have a feeling he's still going to get a lot of stolen bases. He's still a really fast guy. Then at number 3, Anthony Rendon, who a lot of sites have ranked as their number 1 second baseman. But he had an insane amount of plate appearances last year. He missed like no games last year. You can't really project that for anyone. So 292 with 18 home runs, a little bit of regression on the home runs because he's going to have less plate appearances. 80 RBI, 100 runs because that is a pretty good lineup there in Washington. 20 stolen bases. He could do it again this year. Then we have at number 4, Brian Dozier, who was okay last year. He had his ups and downs, but he still hit very well. A lot of home runs. Stole quite a few bases, actually. He's a legit 20-20 guy. Possibly a 25-25 guy, but he's not going to hit for a lot of average, but he could score a lot of runs. It all depends, so pick your poison. If you want a guy who's going to give you home runs and steals, but not really do too much for average in a roto league, he's decent. In a head-to-head points league, he's pretty valuable. Yeah. And then we go to number 5, D. Gordon, a guy I could definitely rank higher. I project him to hit 278 this year with 5 home runs, 35 RBI, 70 stolen bases, and 105 runs. He goes to an amazing lineup in Miami, so he's obviously going to get driven in a lot, and he's probably going to be a leadoff hitter, so don't expect him to have many RBIs, which is why I didn't project him for a lot of RBIs, but 70 stolen bases, he can easily do that if he can get on base. He is a speedster. He's going to run a lot, and the big question is he going to be able to get on base enough to where his speed is going to make a huge impact? So that's something you have to consider when drafting D. Gordon, but he's a guy that you can draft and be set on steals in a roto league. He's going to steal a lot of bases. Then we have Jason Kipnis. I keep getting this pop-up. I hope it doesn't keep popping up in the recording. Jason Kipnis, I project him for 264, 20 homers, 30 stolen bases, 85 RBIs, 85 runs. Those are pretty good projections. He was hurt last year. The year before that, he was very, very good. He hit 280, and last year he hit 240. So I'm going to go right in the middle and say 260. I think he's going to have a full season this year because hopefully he doesn't get hurt. If I'm not mistaken, he had either a wrist or a leg injury, and that does impact his home runs. So Jason Kipnis, number 6. Ian Kinsler is my number 7 second baseman. I have him projected for 276, 15 home runs, 12 stolen bases, 85 runs, or 85 RBIs, 90 runs. That's a good lineup. It should be a good lineup. Runs, RBI, everything. He's got Yoenis Cespedes, Miguel Cabrera, JD Martinez. It's a good lineup. He's going to drive it a lot. He's going to be driven a lot. But the stolen bases, he's really stopped stealing bases. He's slowed down on the stolen base pace the last few years. So Ian Kinsler's not that guy that you can really rely on for stolen bases anymore, as well as his power has gone down from year to year. So, I mean, come on. One thing I wanted to add about Jason Kipnis was his ISO last year. His isolated power was half of his career average. So the power's got to come up for Kipnis. Now we go to Dustin Pedroia. Why do I have Dustin Pedroia at 8? He's a perennial all-star. Dustin Pedroia is a beast. I don't like Dustin Pedroia this year. Dustin Pedroia has been hurt the past few years, and sure, he plays through it, but he's not playing at his best when he's hurt. So Dustin Pedroia, in my opinion, isn't the huge fantasy stud that he's been. The power's decreased. The stolen bases aren't there, really. The runs and RBIs are still going to be there because he's playing in a good lineup. He might hit for a good average, but he just hasn't been healthy the last few seasons, and that's not a good trend for me. For a guy that's going to be 30 this year, maybe 31, I'm not sure, but for him to have injury-plagued seasons the last few years, that's not good. Plus, he had a big wrist injury 2 years ago, and that's something you want to be wary of. At number 9, I have Javier Baez, and there's probably a little bit of bias in this because I'm a Cubs fan, and 218 average, there's going to be a lot of strikeouts for Baez, but he's going to hit a lot of home runs. 28 home runs is a decent projection for him. 75 RBIs, depending on how the rest of the lineup goes. 60 runs, it's a decent projection. 16 stolen bases. He stole 5 bases in 52 games last year, so I think 16 is definitely attainable over a season for Javier Baez. He's a nice power-speed combo. Sorry about that voice crack, guys. At number 10, I have Colton Wong, projecting for 253 average, 15 home runs, 25 stolen bases, 60 runs, 50 RBIs. He's really not as good as people think he is. He was good in the playoffs, and that's basically it. He had a few good games in the season, but he really wasn't a stud. He wasn't that great, and people are going to be drafting him way higher than this. People are probably going to be drafting him around the top, like 150, I'm going to say. And Colton Wong is going to be a guy that I'm really going to try to steer clear of this year. I drafted him last year, like right at the tail end of the draft, and I wound up releasing him a few weeks in because he just doesn't really hit well outside of the postseason. That's the honest truth. Then we have at number 11, if this thing will stop popping up, Jed Jerko, 258 average, 25 home runs, 4 stolen bases, 60 RBIs, 60 runs. Those RBI and runs are extremely variable. It all depends on where he's hitting in that lineup because this is a much improved lineup. So depending on where he's hitting, he could do a lot better in one category than the other. And that's all I have to say, really. Torn plantar fascia last year, I'm pretty sure, or it was an ankle injury or something lower leg that forced him to be in a boot and miss a good chunk of the season. So he didn't really get a good full season in terms of batting average or home runs. So expect him to have a bounce back year. He's going to be a sleeper for like a second year in a row, and I'm probably going to take Jed Jerko, to be honest. Down here, this is pretty good value for a guy that can hit you 25 home runs. Sure, it's only a 258 average, but 25 home runs is a lot of home runs, guys. Daniel Murphy is my number 12 and my last ranked second baseman. I have him projected for 288 average, 8 home runs, 55 RBI, 16 stolen bases, and 80 runs. Those are easy projections for Daniel Murphy. He's pretty much like one of the most consistent fantasy players. He always hits for a good average, not a lot of home runs, steals some bases, and he gets driven in. He gets driven a lot more now than he has in past years, and that's just because he has a better lineup around him now. And that's basically it for this video, so I want to thank you guys for watching. If you disagree with my rankings, or if you agree with my rankings, leave a comment down below, as well as liking the video for these awesome projections and rankings. And I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys later.